Hey, everybody. It's Matt Michaels here on the DeFalco Files with the owner and creator of FSW, Future Stars of Wrestling, here in Las Vegas, Mr. Joe DeFalco. Joe, how you doing today?
Doing good. What are we rehashing guests now? What's going on?
Well, you know what? Remy Marcel approached me and he was dripping blood from a spike in his head. And, when you feel compassion because someone is physically bleeding in front of you, you just kind of go, yeah, we'll get you on. We'll put you on.
I have no idea because you can ask all the guys. I have no empathy for nothing if you just ask them.
It's true. It's true. He's a cold-hearted bastard.
That's right.
Remy, how you doing, man? How has the recoup been since that big match at GCW versus FSW, where I assume that you had like shish kebab on that skewer, right?
I mean, I'm not as worse for wear as other people. You know, Bone and Cody took a little bit more of the brunt for the colors, and I just for all intents and purposes, it wasn't the most ideal situation. Heading into that, I asked Joe. I said, "Yo, man, you know what this guy does?" And he assured me he knew, and that nothing of that nature was going down. He said it was going to be a wrestling match. He was like, "We here at FSW, we do wrestling here." Sure you do. Sure you do. I think I was the old bait and switch. He said, "Hey, I can get you a match."
You know, the bottom line was, Chris Bay wrestled him, and he didn't take spikes in the head because Chris Bay said, "I'm not going to take spikes in the head." You can do the same thing.
Listen.
You wanted the glory. Come on.
Sure. I think it was the old bait and switch. I think you got more of a thrill out of that one than anybody else there, bro. But yeah, it was fine. And Bay went through a door that night too. So I mean, like again, who really got the brunt end of it all? Like GCW and FSW, you're just what you're in for, right? And that's kind of the night of it. No matter what Joe had told me, no matter what bait and switch I can sit here and produce for you, which is what actually happened. I knew what I was getting myself into. I mean, I knew what was going to happen that night.
It was like the whole disco situation. I'll take the blame for everything, and everybody blamed me for booking Disco versus Effie. But that was the only match that I had no say in because Bret insisted on Disco.
I mean, that's really
the entire time. And I got the Twitter lambasting like I can't. But the bottom line was Bret was right. That got the most heat on the entire card.
And the match was fairly an entertaining as fuck match. I mean, like, how do you not go in there with the idea that Disco in general, right? And then Effie is probably at the peak of where he's at today. Both with the show and working, he's getting a lot of notoriety. I think if there's going to be a next one probably going or signed or whatever, I mean, he's definitely in that boat. Whether or not it depends on where he lands, I don't know. And he might even have his own thing that we don't even, I mean, he might not even want to go anywhere. Who knows? He might be fine and dandy just where he's at doing right now. But to the idea of not having him versus Disco as an entertaining, that's price of admission right there, right? I mean, alone.
It started with the promo. Disco had a great promo to start, and Effie came back, and even after the match, Disco was like, "Man, I didn't know that guy can cut such a good promo." Disco was popping for it.
Listen. You get two of them. You get two entertaining people. It's going to create magic, and I mean that goes with like what happened this weekend. It just goes to show when wrestling's done in a good manner. And Bret knew, both you and Bret knew that while Jay Vidal is idealistically the local hot favorite person that should be getting Effie at the moment, or the Shade, which was the two in the running for locals, which absolutely you any day of the week, Joe would throw you the local. But when something comes down from a higher power, a higher office, and Bret knew exactly what he wanted, and he knew Disco and Effie was going to be something amazing. So for all intents and purposes, that's exactly what it ended up being, because the crowd was hot that night for all the matches. I mean, everything that they gave them that night was crazy. And you led right into that flow of the show was perfect. The first match was high and intense. And then me and Koger had a pretty good, both wrestling, and then it got a little weird. And then, you came back with some Disco Effie, and then it led right into Cody and Bone with the murder, death, kill favorites. And I think that's, I don't know. Hopefully FSW got put on some sort of pedestal, because I know a lot of people have been putting over the GCW kind of going into territories and it being that core guys versus whatever. And I think if at some point, if Joe or Rocky can get to FSW to do that, that would be a great, because it seems to be like that's kind of what's going on, right? Everybody's kind of floating their flag, GCW, FSW, and these are the people that you kind of get with that. And the corporate shows, the combined shows, when you get guys like Bay versus Koger, where it's both good wrestling and then they can take it to the next level. Listen, we're all in that boat, and I think I just proved that people might have questioned that, and that's where my role was for that night, right? If you questioned anything about what I did, I was going to put it past you. And I think that was more on Joe giving me the opportunity to do so.
Joe, when you think about what Remy said in terms of being able to go to different territories and fly your flag, how much consideration have you given to that, and how rough would it be in terms of the risk that you would be taking of, let's say, a money hemorrhage from doing something like that if there's not enough support in terms of where you're going? Like, how would you make something like that work? Because it seems like it's very difficult unless you have that type of GCW following.
That is true, but what GCW did and what we did is we have the following in Vegas. So us having the following in Vegas, GCW can't go to every town and just feud with one of the companies and it'd be a big deal. We're kind of a big deal, and they are a big deal. So what we need to do is, like, we have a great relationship with Dom, who runs Phoenix Championship Wrestling, and Remy and Cody, the Suavecitos, and a lot of their guys, as well as Hammerstone and Graves and Class. They're all part of that show anyway. And like, even for the first show, Dom's like, hey bro, we're looking at running this date. Are you going to run? And it's like, well, we can kind of, mix up our schedule. If you're running that day, I want to give my guys the opportunity. So I'm not going to, there's no sense. We could run the day before, we could run the week later, but the idea, and we've had a couple of the talks, and Gallo even on here, they just ran their first show back. So they need to get up and running. They need to get themselves out there, and they killed it on that first show back. So now, being that we already have the influx of FSW guys already there, to now work some storylines in to do some kind of invasion, some kind of joint thing, I think that's the best option for us, because we also, FSW's name carries a little weight in Arizona because of the fact that we had FSW Vegas. So there's some longtime fans who kind of know who we were. And just with the guys that we use, when people see stuff from Phoenix about Hammerstone and Graves and Class, the majority of their stuff is what they're doing in FSW in Vegas. So
right. That's true, but I think a lot of it also in the last maybe 3 to 5 years happens to be that their promotions virtually steal everybody from Vegas, and all Vegas talent is predominantly FSW, right? So yeah, Jay Vidal,
FSW Arizona, Arizona Wrestling Federation. I joke and call it FSW Arizona.
Well, I mean, they're going to go to the closest place with the best talent, and they know that they are going to produce, and while some talents get more, used than others, and that's for whatever reason that is, that's kind of where you kind of, I don't know. I think you play the game with the idea that you're trying to use the best talent that's around, that's closest, that's viable, that you can produce. It's the same thing Joe does. And any local territory will probably end up doing, Arizona, though, it has a very small influx of talent over the last little bit. I think Dom and what they're doing out of the PCW Arizona crew, you're starting to see that first battle royal. You saw a lot of good talent coming out of there, and that's where I think it would be beneficial to both run a joint show of some sort, or at least something to where there is some sort of something to it. They're already using a lot of us, right? So why not try to make the most out of everything to where maybe you're able to create a bigger show, or like maybe there is like a venue to where they drew a lot of people at that show, that outside venue, and then we drew a lot of people at the what's the latest venue called? Remind me. The amusement, right? So we had a pretty big show between the two. Now we can actually think about maybe doing a built show to maybe piggyback one night in FSW joint show, big show, and then we go back and do it in Phoenix the next night or something of that nature, or vice versa. Because we're already doing that. The talent's already being used. Why not?
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it and thinking about it. Let's talk about some of that influx of talent. We just had High Octane this past Friday night. Between the two of you, we have different perspectives on what went down and how some of the guys are coming along. And let's start with the Suavecitos. Did that live up to your expectations, Joe? And then Remy, if you have anything about that match as well, how do you think that match actually came off?
I thought it came off extremely well. The Suavecitos are very talented for the time that they have been in the business. They really get a huge reaction for guys that haven't been doing it very long. And, I specifically, put that because Danny's an annoying person who is easily disliked. So being that he has that personality about him, is that he gets under the skin, but he also does a great job when the fans are getting under his skin. He really reacts to it, which now brings up the level because they see how hot he gets when the fans, start their Suave Puto chants, and they really try to rile him up, and he gets riled up more than pretty much anybody on the roster. So it kind of works great for them. They just need to keep working, keep improving. Adrian Quest being part of that group, I think, is the idea was to kind of give them a maturing process a little quicker, because that is one thing. They're very young and they're not the most mature dudes. So having a guy like Quest, who over the last year, is doing it in New Japan, and he's really getting a lot of recognition. He's that calming factor to try to keep these guys in check.
And Remy, what do you see in those guys, in the Suavecitos? They worked Death Proof. You have two really, really strong veteran presences in the ring with them. It's a tag team title match. Do you think that type of opportunity gets to highlight a little bit of the strengths, but also you personally, as someone who is a trainer, has been in the business for a long while now, can pick up on some of the weaknesses to kind of help them, guide them along into becoming more solid as a tag team?
Sure. I mean, for where you watch it back, and Joe's big on testing you, right? So if you sit there and you go into a meeting with him and you're like, hey, this is what I kind of want, or this is what I'm looking for to do it, Joe's going to give you the test. And usually if it's a singles guy and you're just coming in off of whatever, it's hammer, right? Like that's the test, it just never fails. You're going to get put in with the best that night. And I think like when you talk about a tag team and for where they're at, Death Proof is the tag team aside from the R&B, right? Those are the two tag teams that you would test any tag team that would be like, all right, this is what I'm doing. For students, or I don't even see, it's hard, Mike, because at some point the students become a graduated, there's not students anymore. At some point you have to graduate to that point. And usually on the shows or getting over is kind of that graduating point, right? So the Citos to me are colleagues. They're just younger guys in the business. So anything I can pass on to them or little tricks of the trade are going to be where I feel are the best. I'm not here to hinder what they're doing or have an opinion other than trying to make them grow. Joe is that point. That's the buck stops with Joe because it's his show. It's what he's looking for. It's his audience of what he thinks is going to drive his market or his product, right? So Joe's big thing is, hey, this is what I'm most impressed with. And when Joe sits there and goes, hey, they had a great match with them, that's usually the testing point. So now you have to grow past that point. So for me, my only advice to them is take the things that were said by Death Proof, because that's where they're going to learn the most, because those guys' advice is tenfold. They were in the ring with them. Until I can get in the ring with them, which is what I'd like to do at some point, I'm not going to be able to kind of get into what I feel they need to do there. On the outside, they've marketed themselves very well. I have my critiques on their marketing ability, right? A Suavecitos t-shirt, whether it's by the company or by them, I'm putting that out there right now, would sell out I want 10% of the sales of this idea. But I mean, I'm just joking with the idea that it's that over though, right? So it's that over that these are as a company or as someone that markets themselves, when you have something like that, you best believe if there was something like that being said in AEW right now, they would already market that t-shirt and it'd be popped out, and the company or them or somebody would be making money off of it in some fashion because the fans want it. They want to have something that they can intangibly hold on to forever and always. It happened with the Following. Look at the Following. You put over the Following that it's the best team that's ever kind of assembled, right? They sold a ton of t-shirts, right? Bryce got that t-shirt made and they sold a ton of it, and people still wear it to this day. And that's what they want to do, is they want to hold on to something forever and always, right? So that's what you want to do, is you want to take what is over and then make it something great. And that's where they're at right now. They just need to start putting good matches out there, getting more of a product, putting more content, adding more layers to whatever they're doing, and keep having what they would call bangers, but clean up
bangers.
clean up a little bit of whatever that next level stuff is. I have an eye for it, right? But my opinion is just my opinion. Sin, Cody, right, all of these guys that are down here, Kenny, even Joe, they all have an eye for what they think the business or where the product is going. And most of them are often right than wrong. So you want to just kind of sponge it up, take all that you like, ring it out, see what you can apply. And that's kind of what happens. The greats have done it. Kevin, Chris, Lacey, they've all done it, right? So they're making a living at it. We all kind of are trying to hammer. So when you do those things, those are the greats. So hopefully they have it in them to grow from it. Danny's hot and he gives the energy. And that's why I think the people are with him or them, because it's not like Ricky doesn't.
Right. Absolutely. And speaking of young tag teams, Joe, what are you seeing in terms of Zander and Chase Bell? Do you think that their progression, which they are, just around a year right now. They've only been tagging for 6 months or so. I mean, it's amazing how long or how far they've come in such a short period of time. What are you seeing with them, and what are you looking at for survival of the fittest with the tag team match that's going to be going on in terms of that build? Do you have everyone set? Do you know where you're heading with that tag team turmoil?
Well, the thing with Chase and Nick was Chase came to us from Louisiana. He was working down there for a couple of years. And before he had his first match, I saw him in training. And I'm like, yeah, this guy looks like he's definitely talented. And I remember we had a Future Shock. and I put him in with Ice Williams. Because again, as Remy said, it's the test. I want to see if this guy is that much further along, or is he's got to go back to the, back to the future shocks and the low card and just trying to get some matches. And unfortunately, they had a shitty match. And it was kind of like, oh, I guess I overestimated what this guy can do. And then through training, and then I'm watching stuff, and other people are like, yeah, he's looking pretty good. Then he had a couple more regular singles matches, and he did very, very well. And I'm like, this guy, he's definitely got a lot of talent. Nick has only been training since June when we reopened, and, within 7-8 months. And here's a guy who was a super fan. Like, I didn't realize it, but he was a guy, because I was looking through lists of names, and he was a guy who had bought tickets for the Meccas and No Escapes and the anniversary shows. And I was like, wow, because I didn't realize it until, he made a payment, and I got his name when he filled out the information that this was the same guy who's been coming to shows for 2 or 3 years. And, he's definitely, without a doubt, one of the hardest workers that we have. He came in way before a lot of other guys, because we were closed, obviously, last year up until June because of the pandemic. And, he came in behind the 8 ball. There's a lot of the younger guys that started, 4 or 5 months earlier. And, he quickly, did everything that was needed. He was always there to help with the ring crew. We had something going on with somebody else, and he was there for that. And he would help clean the gym. And it's kind of easy to notice when somebody's working extremely hard, because we always see the guys that try to avoid doing anything.
I mean, that's see, this is where we have the problem, right? A little bit, not even a problem, but this is where we differ in opinion, right? You do have those guys who don't do as much, right? But then there's the hungry guys who are like Nick and like Bret, who will do everything, who will be there every single day. But also what gets lost in the mix too are the guys who want to do all of that stuff, but financially cannot be that well, you know what I mean? So you all have to make sacrifices, and nobody's one sacrifice is more than the other. It's up to Joe to kind of dictate what happens. The reason why Nick is getting what he's getting is because, in all actuality, Mike, he is the fucking heartbeat of pro wrestling, and especially here in this town of FSW, right? If you're a fan and you started to go to shows, you bought a ticket, and then you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna go and be a wrestler, I'm going to train, and then you're here every single day, no matter what it is, and you're picking up and you're doing everything you need to do the right thing and pay your dues or whatever that is right now, and how that goes, and you're starting to get that, and then you deliver in the ring. Like, it takes all of it. It takes it all. It's not just one specific thing. You need it all to happen. And one thing can outweigh the other thing, right? One thing can outweigh the other thing. But if you're the hardest worker in the room, like Nic Zander, who obviously he's my height. So we know the uphill battle, what it is in my height, right? So he has to be there every single day, and he has to sit there and grit it out. He has to sit there and do whatever the fuck he's got to do to sit and get his teeth in, because at the end of the day, he loves it, right? You can tell by the time he goes out there, when the red light's on, to when he comes back through the curtain, he's delivered. And more often than not, he's getting an ovation in an effort. And more often than not, it's in a losing effort. And that you can't, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, that's something that is lightning in a bottle, right? You have to harness that thing, because the audience is genuinely attracted to him, right? When he gets hit or when he suffers, they suffer with him, and that's crazy. That type of stuff is, you want to pay for that, right? But you can't, and you can't always get that. And I think when you add that tag team stuff in there, yes, there is a heavy tag team division. Yes, the gauntlet is something that's important, right? Death Proof gets the bye all the way through, right? They're the proven guys. They should be at the end of the road. And all of those people, all of those guys should be making their way through that survival of the fittest gauntlet thing. And that's what Joe's big thing has always been about, right? Is he has these themed shows, No Escape, you're in the cage, blah. New Year's resolution, or against all odds, you have to, Rumble, and then the next night you get the shot, or that night you get the shot, or whatever the case may be. Cash in the case. These are all things that Joe makes it entertaining through the shows that we put on. And now it's up to Chase Bell and Nic Zander to ride that wave all the way through the gauntlet. Hopefully they can last the whole entire time, and it's them at the end, because, you know, for all intents and purposes, that's not a bad match that I don't think the audience wouldn't buy into. Chase Bell versus Death Proof, awesome. You know, you also have to think about the R&B too, right? They also have a stake in the game. I don't know. That's a Joe thing. I think Joe will kind of arrange in an entertaining fashion of what that looks like. But I feel Chase is a guy who was established, right? He came in from something. He started training with us. He got a little bit better, and he was already somewhat good. But you have these things where sometimes you've been out of the ring for a little while, or whatever the case may be, and you have not chemistry with somebody 1 minute, and then you can have chemistry the next minute. So one bad outing doesn't define who you are as a pro wrestler. What defines it is how you grow from it, and Chase is growing from it. But Nic Zander is a homegrown talent, you know, started with us, is growing here. So you have that intangible. Them versus the Suavecitos has money written all over it. So you have all of these great things as a young tag team division. And I've always been a tag wrestling fan. You know that. Like when we talked the last time, that's what I love. I love tag wrestling. It's fun. Joe likes tag wrestling too. It's fun. It's a good time. Yeah, I don't know. I'm with the idea that those guys could hold the division easily. Both teams could be champion. Suavecitos, maybe, for me, I feel like are probably about 6 months away of really putting it all together. Like if they keep going out of town and getting the reps in and really defining themselves as content wise, like they've been doing, you're going to see them become really major stars. And they've already started to up their game with the all white gear, and like they're larger than life now, right? Before they were just kind of okay and generic-y, but now it's becoming something, you know, the people are getting behind. They're coming out on lowrider bikes, and they're doing all these things that are kind of just testing the waters of what it would be that's making them good. You also have Chase Bell and Zander, who have that thing too, who got matching gear, and now they're starting to put that together. And now they have a tag name. So now they're making a play in an already deep division. You know, even the Lights Camera Faction could possibly be guys you could probably throw in there as a force or a threat or whatever the case may be, because there's anything like Fresco and Watson aren't good, or even Action Braxton isn't good. I've been in the ring with Braxton. He's not bad as a talent. Whether Joe sees him as a tag wrestling in that faction, I don't know. I think, oh, Jesus. It's been documented that he does not like them.
If you are just listening to this and not watching, a certain motion of a hand going back and forth is the answer to the visual that you didn't see.
Well, I'm glad you censored that over here. So my question is, what are we doing with the Nevada state title, Joe? You know what I mean? Like, I've gone everywhere with it. I've done it. I've been taking it to Florida. I've taken it to Arizona, California. I'm doing the Lucha show this weekend with it. What do you want to do with it, man? You tell me. Because right now, like, you know, you talk about Arizona, right? On October, whatever the hell, PCW has a show. But Class low blowed me. I'm not booked on that show by all means. He probably went to the office, was like, hey, keep him away, please. I'm ready for whomever you got in that. Adrian Quest, Thomas Day, you know, I'm putting it out there. Maybe we should make it a multi-man something or other. Survival of the fittest, please. Let's do this.
Well, there's no doubt you're going to be on the card and you're going to be defending the title. I'm just kind of figuring some things out. I'm pretty sure you're going to be at Future Shock on Friday, correct?
I mean, like, listen, whatever you need me, I'm always there because I defend. This is what I do. But
I have a couple, as Rocky T would say, ideas. I have some ideas that maybe on Friday might lead to something on the 24th.
Good. I like the idea that you have ideas moving forward with the Nevada State title, because while we sit here and we talk about the heavyweight title and the tag titles and the no limits title, there really isn't been a focus on the Nevada State title, right? And you do have all of these major players in every single division. And the idea hopefully was that you would step up. And again, the Nevada State title was something that was a proving ground. It made you prove yourself to go into the next level. And if there's one thing I have done, has been proven to go to the next level. Now I'm going to be the Nevada State champion for as long as possible, right? But it doesn't stop here for me. Like, I'm ready for heavyweight. I'm ready to move on from whatever this is. I'm ready to take it to the next level too for myself. And I think I've proven that at GCW. You know, like like all the FSW originals, so to speak, Cody and Funny Bone and myself, we all have something to prove to everybody else, and that is that we're still major players in this, no matter how tenured we've become. And yeah, we have a lot of upcoming talent. They're great, but let's not forget about what's really being produced. Bone goes out there and gets a reaction every single time, right? And that's 20 years deep into a local scene. That's stuff that is, you know, you can't really grab that. And that goes for Jake, goes for the R&B, it goes for Cody, it goes for all of us that have been here forever, who are still going out there and reinventing ourselves and getting a reaction. Graves and Hammerstone, right? He reinvented his whole entire look, and it took him to a whole new level. And that's hopefully what happens to the rest of us. I'm just now 2 years into this new reinvention of myself. And I think I'm firing on more cylinders than I ever was. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Joe? Nothing.
Joe.
Okay, he's on mute.
I don't know.
I told us that I wasn't that keen on the idea initially. Obviously, you know, the signature fro, you know, it was like, wow, you know, that was you, you know. Even the wife, like, oh my God, Remy cut off his hair. You know what I mean? And when we had talked, when you came back from China, and that was kind of the start of doing that out here anyway, it wasn't something that I thought would be successful. You know, I talked with Disco. He really put over, you know, the new look, the new character, and he had a lot of really good things to say about it, you know, and like he believes what Remy Marcel is now. And that's always going to be the most difficult thing to say, okay, well, I'm this guy now. And it's like, well, it's easy to say what you are. It's easy to say that I'm this guy, but to go out there and make people believe it are a totally different story. And you've done a very good job of changing the perception of what you were to what you are now. And you're going to be like the Godfather, Shango, and the 3-figure combinations of you need one more, and then we'd be good to go.
Well, I mean, my thought process on it all was I had to reinvent myself with everything. You know, I don't have the fro anymore, and that meant I had to change my wrestling style or at least add to it. And I just felt like I was still doing things that were kind of leading me back to the other thing. But here in Vegas, listen, like no matter what I do, how I was doing, I put Ice's brother through a door, yet I'm being, you know, I'm getting adulation for it, whereas any other person probably would be bad for it. And Ice had a lot of his people there that night. You know, I could have been real bad for me. But the thought I had was I had to change everything: my body, my look, my whole persona. People don't even when I introduce myself in other places now, they don't even know. They're like, "Oh, you used to have an afro," you know. And again, it's very like I'm a whole different person. Like I have like this whole new outlook on it. And Disco is a big proprietor of actually giving me a lot more than I, you know, he helped me a lot with just kind of these little I guess interactions we have through the course of the last probably 2 years. And I feel like Joey you know, called an audible for me on the weekend, and you know, Disco, I was able to work with him, and I think that for me was a big moment, just because he hadn't been in the ring in a while, and he, you know, made sure that I knew that he was like, you know, I haven't worked in a little bit, but I would like, you know, you to know that we can go, baby, and he can fucking go, man. He's not like he's not going, and it's just crazy because like that's somebody that, you know, you want to also test yourself with. And you know, Joey, much like Joe, will throw you the bone to you to sink or swim in the deep water. And Disco is definitely that person where he's going to make you work. And it was great. I had a very fun match with him. Set the tone for the entire weekend, and I think a lot of that kind of gave me the confidence going into the next match with Atticus. You know, like or that weekend. I don't know. There's a lot of the shifts in life that you kind of feel during this time, and I think like Disco for me was like that kind of, hey, you're doing a very good job with what you're doing. Keep what you're doing. That motion running. And then Joe is also that person who's like, he'd be the first one to sit there and shit on you if you thought the the idea was terrible.
If you deserve to be shit on, sure.
Absolutely. But if you can come back with something and you change his mind, that's pretty big. You know, I think a lot of people have kind of done that, and I think that's a testament. The latest has been like Maserati, right? Joe would really was just really not about her work and all of these things that she was bringing to the table. Only thought her as something to add to the show a little bit. And then when she started to become serious, and then now it shows her athletic ability. Like I think the intergender match we had was something that I could. For her, it was a coming out party of, hey, I can do all of these things. And then she starts to get put on a bigger scale of like ROH and all that stuff. And then Joe's like, oh, well, damn, you know, now our division's, you know, somewhat good, and Maserati's actually really, really good as a worker. And then you see this crazy match that they have where they're taking it to the next level. And I remember being there at FSW in those moments where you're like trying to push the envelope, and like her and Sandra Moon had a great match that night, right? It was something crazy that to finish off that Sunday weekend was insane. And that whole show top to bottom wasn't that bad. There was a lot of good women wrestling that's been coming out of FSW and FSWW, right? So now Joe's tapping into all kinds of markets where there's women wrestling, and now there's kind of deathmatchy stuff where we're going to kind of get into that a little bit if you want to try to do that, because there's a potential there. And now you can get pure wrestling as well. Now, I think that's when we first started Future Stars of Wrestling. I remember me and Jack really kind of giving Joe shit about like, what is Future Stars of Wrestling, right? There's no Future Stars here, right? But now it's actually a brand name that Future Stars of Wrestling kind of is the Future Stars. And then also you have it pushing the envelope into what the show can be, you know, you with the Natural Born Killers and the GCW mix-up, mashup, and all the other stuff that goes into it. And now all these outside talents. Did we lose Joe? Is that what happened? I don't know. Okay. So that you have all those outside things, or all those things that kind of come into play with it. And I feel that's kind of been the definition of Future Stars of Wrestling now. Not only are you getting the talent, but you're actually getting the brand that's been pushing the envelope, the company itself, right? And I think that's always been a big weird thing with Joe versus the talent, or the office versus the talent. For me, for being on both sides of the situation, that if I can be candid with you, for me and you, you know, I play both sides of the fence, and like I want to see the company grow, but I also understand what we put ourselves through body wise, and what these kids have to go through they pay dues. You know, rent's not cheap in Las Vegas. You know, you have to pay bills. And so you can only make it down so much. You can only pay so many dues. You can only pay your rent so much. And you know, for people who are fortunate enough to have those things where they can kind of do that, great. But it's hard for me not to have a heart for the kids that are really trying to do everything, right? Who are really suffering. That struggling artist was me. I used to live on an air mattress in a no furnished apartment with my boy, because we wanted to be pro wrestlers, right? We thought that was like what we were going to do. We're in the middle of Louisville, Kentucky, you know, trying to get to OVW and shit. And me and Jack moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and we, you know, I mean, seriously, in a 2-bedroom apartment with no furniture and 2 air mattresses, trying to live the dream. And I get that, you know, you have no money, you have nothing to do. And then I don't know if those guys understand that, because they're driving a business, and I get that too. But as an artist and as a performer, these are the crux of what we go through all the time, you know. And I feel strong about where we go or what we're doing with it all. I feel very, very good about where the company's going. I'd like to see it generate a GCW following, you know, like we have a rabid fan base here. They want it. And it goes to show you that with mixed promotional shows, especially like a GCW show, like they had fans here. Yeah, for sure. And that fan, they were rabid and energetic. Oh man, it was great. And I love that kind of stuff. You know, you want that type of atmosphere for your show because that virtually says, hey, I want to go to that show.
Yeah.
Now Joe has to kind of get into an idea of where the marketing with streaming, because that's a big proprietor of their net worth. You know, the reason why Bret can get Mox and Mizoro, Suzuki, and all those guys is because they generate a lot of business through their streaming. And you know, when Joe has the budget, he will give you, you know, what he can. And you know, unfortunately, nobody gets to really understand his side of it. Is he has to juggle between taking care of local talent and taking care of like what's going to drive the business, which is bringing in, you know, name value people. And maybe they're not just WWE, ex-WWE or whatever, but maybe they're, you know, guys who are kind of making their names for themselves, like anybody on GCW, like Joe bringing in like a Danhausen or something like that would be fucking cool, right? But
Yeah.
I think he's gotta like go through ROH or something like that, you know. But Impact guys and having guys like Bay is huge, you know. Like having Bay here that weekend was massive because not only does the local fans not get to see Bay a lot, but now he's on a whole nother level, you know. Like he's now the local fan base of Vegas is 7 degrees away from the Bullet Club. Crazy. It's crazy. It's wild, right?
Yeah, watching it, just seeing him with his new gear, you know. I remember when he used to have that 2-cent gear back when he first started. I looked and I was like, wow, this guy looks like, you know, we didn't know who he was. You'd say, wow, look at this pro wrestler. And it's like, wow, I still remember when he walked that door, you know.
But Baby, the first one to tell you that, you know, without FSW, he wouldn't have gotten that, you know. And he like, we all struggle. We all eat shit. Like, I don't think maybe people do know, maybe they do have some sort of documentation about it, but everybody struggles different. And Bay moved on a dime and he gave himself no other option but to succeed. And that's a growing thing, right? You know, you burn the boat, you know, and that's something. But some people don't have that luxury or don't have that option. And I'm not saying or taking away from anybody's struggle, but everybody's different. And so my role in this whole idea of, I like to play the good uncle, you know. Sin's the bad grandpa or the mean grandpa, right? Sin kind of, you know, he's just like the you know, and he needs to be, man, because he's smart and he's just fucking intelligent with what he's got going on for the business. And then Cody's really, like, you know, driving in home because he came from a point where, like, that's, you know, that's where it is with him. You know, he's really cares about you being the best you could be. And then, you know, you have the stars that come in like TJP and Kenny, who will kind of be like, you know, you get that feel from the star quality, you know, ROH or wherever they're going or wherever they are. And we have those drop-ins. And I think like the students need that, or our core crop of talent needs to fucking feel that type of stuff too, because they need to hear it. What's going to make them get to that next level? What's going to make them make it in this thing? And we give you all the tools. We give you all the tools, and how you build your ship to sail it off is completely up to you, you know. And I think you're going to see that. Like, I started with I think 7 people in January, which is like Alice Blair and Dana Lynn and Brett and Nick and a few others. And like now, you know, Raw, Reese, now they're all like on the show, you know, or doing the shows or getting booked or doing other things. And that's not just me, that's Cody and Sin and Kenny and everybody else. And Joe, you know, they all have a hand in developing them. But for the most part, you're starting to see them come together or come out sooner. You know, like it used to take them years or a year to kind of get what it is. And a lot of them are putting a lot more time in it. So it is, you get out of what you put in majority of the time, right? That's with anything.
Joe, you know, Remy just brought up a name, and that name is Jon Moxley. He does live here in Nevada. Would you not consider maybe trying to get Remy a match with someone like Moxley for a title that technically would be someone who is from Nevada and would represent the state very well?
We've had a couple of conversations with Jon Moxley, and he used the facility to train. He's a guy who does what he wants to do when he wants to do it. And the relationship he has with Bret and GCW goes back years.
Yeah.
So he'll pop up anytime Bret's doing something because he needs him. The only reason I'm pretty sure Moxley didn't win the title last month was because he wasn't at the show. Originally booked to be on the Vegas show, and then AEW did their show, and then the first show he was available for, they had him win the belt, because the whole idea was for him to feud with Nick Gage, and they probably would want to do it in Jon Moxley's hometown.
Yeah. Well, because if you were at that show though, like, I almost feel like it was better because they gave a kid a shot, right? Where Cordova came out and gave this like undercard talent a shot at it, pretty much, picked him out of the crowd and was like, and God, Matt, bro, that's pro wrestling in a nutshell. Yeah. Like the story. Were you there? Did you see it?
I wasn't there, but I did see it.
Oh my God, bro. The energy, like the video footage doesn't do the energy in the crowd any justice because it was just so crazy. I mean, like he had him, and I think that a lot of that goes into Cordova doing, you play the role that is given to you, and he's played a beautiful role in this whole situation. They all have, but you don't get these things without other stuff being prior to it, and while we are on the subject of that kind of stuff, like that plays into everything. That plays into the stuff that we used to do. That's why we get most of the stuff out of what we do or how we write the show. AEW this weekend, like while we sit here and we clamor for Punk and Bryan and Cole, I don't think those things happen without them having the stints in WWE, right? A lot of it, all of it, the bullshit that Punk went through, Daniel, Bryan went through, and even Adam Cole, like you get all these great pops out of what the culture of pro wrestling is. And that's what makes it brilliant. That's what makes it so good for everybody. Yeah, I don't know. I've had a dark match before Mox was even anything with ROH with him. So it'd be great to rekindle that. It was awesome.
Did you get any offense in that match?
Negative. I never do. I was Afro Remy and about 130 pounds. I definitely didn't look the way I do now. I think a lot of that too is great because I play in a role, and now my role is a little bit different. You even book me differently, Joe. So like the idea is to book or write in the fashion of what these things are. You know what I'm saying? Like while Afro Remy was somebody who just took a beating the whole time, 86 Remy's was a bit different. I used to roll with Jack and Kevin. So I mean, like, you keep, in the company you keep is how you're pretty much going to roll. And those are two bad motherfuckers too. Right. And like, I don't know, like for me, I feel there's a lot of things that we've done great for our show. Right. And how we're producing out there. And a lot of the guys have reinvented themselves in small manners. Like look at Ice and the Faction. Like, wow. Like that's been a completely transforming, like so much heat, so much of a reaction. They come through the screen with anything they do. Joe can write all day for them if he really wants to kind of get into the grid of it, which he already has. Like, just watch the 6-man. We were talking about it earlier before we got on air, but the 6-man was good. It was a really good match, and I like having those things be where our final show on High Octane is, as a writer, producer, or whatever I am, or at least somebody that talks to Joe. As Joe's writing, he's like, "What do you think of the show?" Yes, that was good. And he top to bottom, he said he didn't do bad. And we haven't had a real big stint in a long time where Joe's kind of happy with a lot of the shows, right? But more often than not, he's been pretty okay with a lot of the stuff that the guys, when he writes for good and we have the good core talent. Joe's also been a proprietor of trying to do this too, which I think is good, is having less matches, right? He ran 7 matches one night and he was like, that flowed so well. And I think you do have a good flow with what the show is. While you sit there, and he is right. He has a bunch of stuff where he's like, I have to fit all these guys on. And, you know, and he does that for the guys to get reps. I mean, the reason why the Suavecitos are getting good and everybody's getting good is because Joe just shoves 10 matches out there, right? And for the most part, we try to get it underneath two and a half hours.
And then get motherfucked about it.
Well, that's unfortunately, Bud, that's just the problem you have with being a leader, man. You know, like you're the head of the thing, and you do have you have good ideas, but you also have these crazy things where you're going to get motherfucked because you have like me and Matt were talking before you got kicked off, where, you know, we do have guys who in our core, in our coming up, they can't make everything just because they have rents and bills and all of these things that they have to do in 9-to-5 jobs that aren't easy. Like, bro, I'm trying to look for an apartment now, and it's crazy. Like, our housing market in Vegas is nuts. It's bananas. And like, I couldn't imagine being a student at 20 years old working as a barista, trying to become a pro wrestler, right? And also trying to afford rent, bills, and a cell phone. And you want me to do what? You want me to have a cell phone that has Facebook so I can social media on top of paying dues, on top of paying rent, on top of paying internet because I need to put the social media out. Then I have to get good gear. Then I have to, like, come on, man. Like, you have to, at some point, there's got to be a balance, you know? And I think, like, while we sit here and we produce the best thing forward, moving steps forward are definitely things that happen. We as a company was a very mom and pop for a good part of our company, but now we've grown into this company. You know, we have a school and we have things that are kind of in place, and we just need the infrastructure it just a little bit differently. There just needs to be a little bit of an infrastructure where these students know what their peak is and then what's the next step over. And Joe normally is pretty good with that kind of stuff if you talk to him. So they just need to talk to you.
Yeah, try talking. I heard some more stuff this week that just boggles my head.
Why? Well, you know how you are. You know what it is.
Oh,
it's every day.
You know. Oh, we're getting enough wins, I heard, was one of them now.
Well, this is the problem with running a business. Okay, I know we sit here and we do this, but this is the problem with running a business. And I used to tell you this all the time is, first and foremost, nobody's speaking up for whomever is going to say those things, right? So you have to kind of speak up for yourself. But you want to do it in a manner that's not like that, right? But in this day and age, the squeaky wheel does get the oil. You know, it's not that it gets replaced sometimes. You know what I'm saying? But
sometimes it gets replaced.
I know, that's what I was gonna say. But I mean, what we're doing right now is that you have to sit here and you have to fight, and it depends on what hill is there to die on, right? We always talk about that, you and me. What are we going to die on? Doesn't really matter.
That's Remy's favorite line: "The hill to die on."
It's true. That's accurate, because you have to pick and choose. You know, like, is it really a point to really die on this hill? And I don't. For me, like, there's certain things that you have to. And Joe be the first one to tell you that some of the hills I've died on are completely asinine. You know what I mean? But in the moment, I'm passionate about what it is I need to die on.
Well, you know, but speaking of that, Joe, and in terms of, I think this is a very interesting idea, and that is, if you look at the structure of what you're building, and I know that you've said in the past, you know, as we've talked about, you know, dues and how dues will go down for certain people when they get to a certain level or show, you know, certain potential or what they're working towards. Is there any way that you've ever thought of kind of almost structuring it to the point where, if you know a kid is just determined to make it, he's put in, let's say, 6 months, he's showing a lot of potential, that you start thinking of how can we help him out by either, you know, lowering dues or giving scholarships, essentially. What can you do, or what have you done to allow those kids who you see that potential there, so that they don't end up just, you know, having to leave because of the fact that they just can't, you know, pay their everyday living costs?
I've done it before. A guy like Chris Bay and Cross, you know, Kevin, there were times that he couldn't he couldn't come up with the cash. And when the potential was there, like with Chris Bay, it's like, am I defeating the purpose trying to get a couple $100 off this guy who is like going through the system extremely quick, and you know he's got a lot of talent? Because in the long run, at the end, sure, it's going to backfire on some occasions, but I got Chris Bay working for me now, and I'm not treated like every other promoter trying to book him. You know, Joe.
Sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, but Matt, it's virtually like the NCAA. You know what I mean? You're going to get boosters, right? And Joe essentially becomes a booster where he kind of sees potential in you, where you have to get kind of whatever. And no, we're not in that situation. I might be talking, you know, a little bit of the underbelly of it, but that's basically what it is. This is not set up in a structure where it's like, hey, you made it to this and you graduate and this is what happens. You know, more often than not, you're kind of going into this idea where like Joe sees potential in you, then he's going to sit there and like either knock off something or get something. And it's not like these guys don't work for it. I mean, these guys would do shows for free. And that's a cost. Kevin would come in and use the facility at any point in time. I believe at one point, a lot of these guys would come in and use it 24/7. That all is a cost. Turning the lights on in this place is a cost. Having the computer, having something in there, even entering the ring this is all a cost to even having this open to you. And all of us as a collective roster are able to have this facility to our beck and call at 24/7 at this point. I think at this point, right? And that's crazy. No 24-hour fitness, as some 24-hour fitnesses aren't even 24 hours. But if we want to come in here and we want to cut a promo or we want to film something or we want to do something, we need to edit or we need to do something, it's at our beck and call. And I think like that is a cost to Joe and Rocky and whatever the case may be. However, there's no guidelines to that unless you talk to Joe, unless they actually talk to Joe. And some guys, you know, it's a lot easier than others. You know, some people are very quiet or very introverted or whatever the case may be. You know, like a guy like Hero Lou, I think says but 3 words to me the whole entire time in the back, you know, but is the sweetest guy in the back and fucking awesome. And then when he gets out there, he's the most intense motherfucker ever, right? Like, turns up the energy. So you just don't know what it is that makes people click. And I don't know if everybody has, or if Joe's an East Coast guy. I've grown up my whole entire life around East Coast people, right? They have a salty personality and it's hard to approach with
the
other
nicest
people.
guy I know. What are you talking about?
That you know. But yeah, that's the crux of it, right? So you have to kind of go based off of that. Joe, more often than not, he is the nice guy. He will cut you a break. Maz is a proprietor to that. I think Maz wasn't paying dues for a really long time because she just couldn't afford it. However, you knew the potential that was in her talent and where she could go. And that girl has repped the company the whole entire time. Anytime she was on ROH or anytime she's been used any other place, OVW or wherever, a lot of us get the FSW marker for it. And I think that's a cost to Joe. That's valuable to him. You know? So I think that's where it becomes valuable on all levels, right? We have value by the places we go. Most of the guys that go to Arizona are all known as FSW guys or FSW trained or whatever. Thus the reason why they get used. Or if Marquez wants to use you in Hollywood or Primetime or whatever project he's doing, he's integrating a lot of FSW talents. I think Hero Lou's the next one making Primetime.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I just saw that yesterday. You know, that way when Marquez tries to invade Vegas, you know, try to use as many of our guys as possible. But he would never.
And again, I think when you go into somebody's territory or whatever, you know, you play the role. And Dave, for me, has always been somebody that will come in and ask. Joe has a different relationship with them where promoters, that's something that, you know, I really don't have a grasp at, you know, Matt. Like when it comes to promoting a show, like I'm producing, writing, and I know a lot of the backstage stuff on it, but Joe has a little bit of an uphill battle by all these guys coming in and essentially just kind of not piggybacking off of him because they all want to do their own show, but he's got stuff that he has to kind of worry about, whether it's the same audience or whether this happens or whether that happens, because he's driving a thing. What he does stay true to is his writing over everything, right? How he books the shows, who he books on the show. His writing over everything is how he is producing FSW, and it's working, or has worked for the last, gosh, I don't remember not having a good show where we drew at a big casino or a big venue in a really long time. You know, at least that last anniversary, both nights weren't bad. I mean, the first night better than the second, but both nights were great.
Yeah,
Coming off of a pandemic.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point that it's been years. You know, in recent memory, you can't think of a show that didn't do well in a bigger setting. Joe, with that, do you feel that you're starting to see, because of the Vegas talent, you are starting to see people try to come in and then use that talent for whatever company, you know, they have coming in? Is that something that you look at as something that, even though it's your talent, they're still getting the exposure, but it's under a different banner? I mean, how does that work for you as a promoter in just balancing out the good and the bad that comes along with other companies wanting to come in and use that type of talent?
Honestly, I don't like it, but I also understand it. When somebody's going to come in and offer Remy Marcel more money than I'm going to pay him on a show, and I'm not running a show that day, well, you know, everybody's struggling to pay bills and live their lives. Who am I to tell somebody they can't make X amount of dollars? And, you know, some people read it wrong. And I have conversations with some of the younger guys and try to explain to them, when you're going to work for somebody else and inferior competition is coming in and beating you because you're perceived as a higher talent at FSW, just be aware you're not helping me. You're not going to help your situation. If a team goes over to another place and they job out to a team that people look at and say, wow, those guys aren't very good, why would I have them beat my upper end echelon teams? If the RB went all over Vegas and started losing to all these people, that wouldn't help me in any way. You know, it's, you know, be protective of your situation, you know, and it's like, make sure you're wrestling people. That was always my biggest concern, where our guys would go over there, and even if they were younger talent, it's like, make sure you're in there with somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing. Because I've seen it around this town that there's a lot of guys that I wouldn't even let work practice matches in a training facility because they ain't fucking good enough. I've seen some of that, and it's like, wow, who the fuck booked this guy?
Well, as a talent, it's hard. It's really tough, right? I mean, Joe has a point. You do need to go in there and protect what you're doing, for the most part, right? And again, I've had a couple of instances where I've been, you know, I'm Joe's Nevada state champion, and I had to work local and go under. And not that going under is ever a problem, but you still want to do it in a fashion that is both protecting myself and what we're doing, and also other things as well. And I think the only other time that I went under was to Bone, you know, and I have no problem doing that because Bone's fucking amazing as a talent, you know, and he's been a mainstay here in Vegas as a legend, whatever you want to use. But other than that, he's a fucking great talent. So you want to do that. And with the younger guys, you know, it's hard because they have no. I'm probably okay to get away with saying something, where these guys are just trying to get booked. They're just trying to get.
And I never have an issue with some of these younger guys. The more matches they can get under their belt. But again, if they're guys with 10, 15 matches, they're wrestling guys with less experience than them, it's probably not much of a help.
Correct. Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, and then you also have to face the promoter doesn't, you know, you're just there as an independent guy, contractor, to do a job, right? This guy wants you to paint the house fucking blue. I'm sorry, but I have to paint the fucking house blue. So, you know, while the fucking house is fucking pastel blue and I don't want to do it, I have to fucking do it, and I got to move on to the next job. And that's pretty much what it is for us as an independent talent. As a guy who's in on the office, of course you don't want talent intermingling with other things because you're wearing out your welcome, so to speak. Everybody gets a hold of you, or everybody sees you, and you want to kind of pick and choose those things too. So it's very hard to juggle that thing, you know, like also you have to take into accountability of what you're doing when you're doing it. So for this local talent, it's hard. I feel for the younger talent in a sympathetic way, to where like I don't know what the right decision is for them, so they have to kind of pioneer their way through whatever choices they make. And Joe, he's gonna do what's best for him, the company, and his product, and what sells for him. And like, while Joe can't get mad at them taking bookings, they also can't get mad at Joe for not booking them. Like, it's got to go both ways.
And that's the biggest pet peeve. They all believe that they should do whatever they want, and then I'm still supposed to cater to them, because you got to a lot of our younger students that are starting to get matches, when they're going elsewhere, that's the first time somebody's throwing them a few bucks. So now all of a sudden they feel their worth. A few years back, there was a guy who came in, and then he started, hey, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to pay you this much more than Joe, and I'm going to do this. And it was like, when you're young and inexperienced, and I can give you 3 matches a month, when this guy's running every 6 weeks, was that one payday worth it compared to getting more experience? You got to look at it in their own way. And there's issues going on now with some talent that they feel this way. Well, I feel that way. So if you feel that way, it's okay. You have to do what's best for yourself. So if you feel that you can't work for me because of this, well, then fine. I'm not going to use you. I have 50 emails a month from people that are really talented. There's a guy who's actually going to debut for us finally, Keita Murray, who, Remy, dude's excellent. Dude's awesome. And it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about anything other than I'm trying to make sure that the Suavecitos and Chase Bell and Nic Zander are getting matches, and guys like Eli Everfly and Tito Escondido and Che and Brandon Gatson aren't getting booked because it's not a big role. So I'm trying to get the Brandon G's a match, but we all know those guys are not better than Eli Everfly.
There it is. There's a 4-way. It's Brandon Gatson, Keita Murray, Bret The Threat, and Ray Marcel for the Nevada State title.
Nah, excellent. They're in a scram. Yeah, maybe Bret The Threat. We'll see. If Bret The Threat, I heard he has some things that he wants to get off his chest about you on Friday.
Oh yeah,
I mean, great. That's what I heard. That's a rumor.
Yeah. No, he doesn't talk at all. No, he doesn't have anything to say. Right?
No.
Gosh. That's not him at all. I mean, these are the things that happen for Joe to want to, for you to get booked and such. This is what it is. And some people are just undeniable, and that's really what you want to get to as a young talent. You want to become so undeniable that you can do everything. And a guy that comes off the top of my head is, Jay Vidal, Matt Vandergriff. These are guys who kind of have, while they're just simmering and probably aren't getting the big, humongous, paydays, they are still kind of freely going and coming and choosing and what shows is coming in and out of here. And I think that's what happens when you become undeniable. And those two, I think as of late, I think Joe would agree, are the two that are kind of becoming undeniable. You do have guys out there at a SoCal like Eli Everfly that we've used, right? So now you have all of these guys that are kind of doing every show or at least a lot of shows, and that's kind of a marketing point for yourself. Joe's going to go and be like, well, this guy's done this, and when he goes on social media or does whatever to promote the show, I'm at FSW tonight, blah blah blah. That's a value to Joe. When you're a young up and coming talent, let's just say, when you're a young talent that doesn't go a whole lot of places, that's where it becomes like a thing, right? You just want to create as much of a stir as much as possible, and that's what makes you a value to Joe to want to do that kind of stuff, is because Jay gets to do everything, or has done a lot of things, or Matt has done a lot of things. I just in the last year between January to now, a lot of us have hit Florida, Arizona, California. The boys have gone down to Mexico and done some Mexico stuff. So I mean, it's crazy to have that be, oh well, this guy wrestles for FSW, but he's also doing all of this other stuff too. So what's FSW, or what is that? Because we hashtag it, or we do something that they follow, or whatever the case may be.
I always encourage it, just because of the fact of the shows that we do. I try to let people know you're not going to be on every show. We have too many guys. So I have no problem. Go to Texas, go to Washington, which seems to be the new hot spot everybody seems to be going to a lot. Do your trips to California and Arizona. Just let me know in advance. Like, hey, this is the date I'm going to need you. If you can work that, I had to have a conversation with Matt Vandergriff. He's getting booked so much. I'm like, bro, we've done a lot for you in FSW. Try to keep some dates open for me. And, there's a bunch of other dates. You're a main player here. We need you in the mix. Jay Vidal, like, he'll hit me up and say, hey, bro, somebody is interested in using me this date. Are we running? Because, he has a loyalty to FSW and he knows there's enough bookings out there, but he wants to make sure his home base is taken care of. And, right. And that's why we have the talent that we have. A lot of those guys do make FSW their priority and their number one choice. A guy like Hammerstone, who has the pick of the litter, and he's not at those guys' level. He is legitimately makes a lot of money to go wrestle all over the country. But if he takes a date of mine and somebody offers him something that isn't MLW, if he's already booked with me, he's never said, hey, Joe, somebody offered me more money. I can't work this show. The only time that happened was when, hey, MLW is sending me to Japan and he's going there for 2 weeks to make shit tons of money and wrestle in Japan for Noah. Like, who am I to even think of saying like, hey, bro, we needed you for survival of the fittest. Well, we may do, and that's why Hammerstone takes a lot of bookings with me because he knows he's making the money elsewhere, and he's appreciative to when I brought him in from when 9 years ago he was training in some random ring with Profit down in Arizona.
Well, again, there's a value to that, right? And you're able to, just like how you get everything at a thing, or how you run your business is how you run your business. And Hammer, because he's just a really loyal and good person, genuinely, right, as a person, and that kind of how he runs his business, or how he does his business, right? So for Joe and for FSW, it's always been loyalty or something. It's not been a point where Joe won't give him some money or try to come up to his rate. But we know at this point right now, Hammer is so far along that it's really, he's doing it out of the goodness of his heart to just be around, and because he believes in the company, bleeds the company, right? And he's been the champion for a really long time, 3 times over, whatever. He's been a champion.
He had that weird 2-week reign that somebody talked me into taking the belt off him a few years back.
Legitimately never made a title defense. Anyway, it's good for business. But he won't put it over. The thing is the Joe's going to have to do that. But what also Joe has to understand too is Hammer has that option, right? He's getting MLW. He has all these other things. He has Arizona. He has a life that does that. While a lot of us local guys are scraping and cutting and gritting our teeth to try to get that payday too, or trying to come up with some money. And I would love to sit here and be able to tell everybody, no, I don't need to make any more money. I just work for FSW. That would be ideal and a dream, but that's not even a capability right now. And I think that's the idea that a lot of us have being on the roster for a while, is we have this fear that it will never happen, or that we won't see the repercussions of all the fucking shit that we bled for the company before. We as a I'm just going off of like, just say me and Cody and Jake, for instance, right at this point right now, over the last little bit, we've been around the company since the inception, me and Cody especially, right? And we're not getting any younger. We're not, our bodies aren't magically reproducing this magical thing where we're not getting hurt all the single time that we're out there. But what happens is it all for nothing. And I think like when we go out there for the adulation and all that stuff, yeah, that's great. Yeah, those are deathbed memories and stuff like that. But in the end, we also want the compensation for what we've done for everything. And more often than not, Joe is he hasn't been horrible to us, but he's not, he has no net worth to where he can make a budget. However, if we did have a point where we could get a budget, that would be great. And I think you would actually see the company go to another level. Anytime that we've had a point to get it to the next level, whether it be making the studio a lot better, so where it's inhabitable, where before this place was kind of atrocious to be a part of, like 117 degrees in the FSW arena is not the most ideal, but now you have like these portable air conditioners, and now there's cool lighting, and now it's a place to be. Like the only thing these guys are missing is like a liquor license to where you can sell alcohol, and it'd be crazy.
Oh, we're working on that. One of our sponsor guys claims they have that traveling license.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I mean, you're that small little step away from actually turning, you don't need to go anywhere else. You know what I'm saying? Like, not that the bigger venues aren't great and anything like that, but you virtually have turned this into a pretty stellar little venue. And again, that's a testament to where the money goes. Like when you sit there and you go, hey, what is Joe doing with the money? Well, we have amazing belts. Like we never had amazing belts. We were doing replicas and shitty belts the whole entire time. For like
Shitsville.
Yeah, or anybody, we would borrow them, or it would just be like some off market thing or whatever. But now you have genuine FSW belts that are being like presented. The company looks away. The canvas is beautiful. The ring has been redone, a million times over to where it's actually one of the better rings to bump in the West Coast. It gets used all the time now. So if you're coming to Vegas, you're more often than not, you're using the FSW ring if you're a company.
That's
and I think
worth the shit.
Yeah, we put money into production a little bit now, like production's being a little bit of an influx of money. And again, this is mom and pop stuff that, they only have a little bit. But God, if you were able to have a money guy back it, if there was a sponsor who was just like, yeah, let's just do what we can, see what we can get out of it. Who knows, the sky's the limit, because there's no difference between us and GCW. We have the same players, the same rabid fans.
I'd argue we have a better roster, but we have a better follow.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that it's weird to sit there and tell you that right now. Like, what's better? Is it the wrestling work rate, or is it what the intangible of producing that stuff is? Like, we don't do a lot of deathmatch things, and like majority of their stuff is deathmatch things. And I'm not saying I don't have an opinion about deathmatch stuff. In fact, I value it very much, because more often than not, the deathmatch wrestlers can work, or would be considered able to work, and they just take it to a whole nother level. And there's a culture, it's like music, where that's our metal. That's metal, man. You know what I mean? Like I just
want to be a fly on the wall, listening to the guys tell Braves what they wanted to do in that match.
Oh, well, like Joe, what are you going to tell Joe? I mean, Joe is probably the out of everybody in the back at that point, Joe is probably the more legit people that you just can't fuck with. So Joe's just going to he's going to let you know what he wants and not want to do. But you had guys like Jimmy Lloyd in there. Like,
yeah.
I mean, what is Jimmy Lloyd?
I figured it'd be safer. I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's this is a little crazy with the second gear crew and Jimmy Lloyd there. Let me have Toa and Graves in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, Bruce is like one of the best, dudes out there, right? So like a lot of these guys, for me, end up being really good people in the back, but then when they get in the ring, they're fucking maniacs. And Joe's like one of those dudes too, at least for me. Like, Joe, I'm glad he likes me, right? But he's a fucking maniac out there. Whether you know it or not, you're gonna get thrown. You don't have really a choice with a lot of these guys. Toa the same way. You really don't have a choice. They're big motherfuckers. Class, Hammer, it's not a night off. Any one of those guys, it's not a night off. And whether they want to throw you around, it's kind of on them to either what are they going to do for the night. And when you start to get into the deathmatch stuff, like that's when you start to kind of figure out, like, I'm just glad I was on. If I was put in that match, I would have been on Team FSW. Because to have Joe on my side is, I'm winning. We're winning that night. I'm just letting you know.
Well, and I think it also goes to show the culture, because personally, and this goes back to training so long ago, and the mentality of the way you protect each other. You protect your own blood. So if it does go, and someone does do something that's a little out of whack, you know that not only is Graves going to step up, but Toa's going to be there, and and you just start going down that line, and you go, yeah, man, these are the brothers I want to have on my back, and I would do the same thing for them. And I think that culture is something that's very important in a locker room, because it shows that you can trust each other with your lives, literally.
Yeah, I mean, even in the writing, like look what happened in the end. Fucking Toa ended up, being with his boy Juicy. So I mean, like,
bastard. I thought he was a good guy.
Yeah, even in the end, they still protect their own, right? And I guess like that goes to show you. Like, I remember when I walked back through the curtain, a lot of the guys didn't know I was getting skewered, right? Like, I didn't tell anybody. It's something that, I mean, if we could pull down the fourth wall a little bit, like I think a lot of people weren't really thinking that I was going to do that. And I think Joe even thought I was going to ixnay it. Like Joe was probably pretty surprised at the idea that I would even let somebody do that to me, because more often than not, I'm probably fighting that situation. But again, it just goes to show you that I did it in the idea that the people that were there that night is something they'd never seen before. And the kid was a good kid, like he wasn't a bad dude. And I valued his wrestling. I was fortunate enough, and not a lot of times do you get this, but I was fortunate enough to know who I was working before I went in there to work. So I knew what was happening, or what my night was in for. And even if I was busting Joe's balls about it, he was assuring me that was not going to happen to me that night. While it happened, as I walked back through the curtain, Joe was like, "What the fuck?" Not Joe DeFalco, but Graves. He was just like, "Do I need to hurt somebody?" I'm just like, "No, we're okay. Everything's going to be all right." Because I'm bleeding at that point, right? He doesn't know what happened. He's doing his thing in the back, getting himself psyched up. So yeah, you're right. When stuff like that goes down, and I think that me and Joe have built that relationship because we've had wars where I've wrestled him one-on-one, and we've had tag matches where we've gone to war. One off the top of my head is Joe booked me and Jack in there with them, him and Hammer, in this like really off the wall show in Benson, Arizona, where for whatever reason it drew like almost 1,000 people. It was great. But we went out there and had we just had a war. And I think like that's where you build those relationships, right? Is in the trenches of everything, whether you guys are out there performing or whether you're in the back and, you have to kind of figure out what that looks like, whether somebody's taking liberties or whatever. I'm just glad I have Graves on my side.
As we kind of get ready to wrap up, Joe, is there anything coming up here with Future Shock this Friday? Of course, you can get it on the FSW network. You sign up for the network, $6.99 a month. You get Future Shock included in that. You also get High Octane included in that every month. So you're getting at least 2 free shows there. What are we looking at for Future Shock? Do you have anything that is announced right now?
We're giving Chase and Nick a break from tag team wrestling since they qualified for the gauntlet. So pretty excited. Chase Bell is going to go one-on-one with Wise Guy, which I think is going to be a really good match.
Absolutely. Wise Guy's fucking phenomenal. He just doesn't get the notoriety. Like he's very respected in the back. His work is top notch. I've been in there a couple of times with him, but he just doesn't get the notoriety. And a lot of people need to kind of, I don't know if it's just the gimmick or the character or whatever the case may be content wise, but he's looks the part. He's super jacked. He's in-ring ability is crazy. He has crazy timing. I mean, it's really good. And it's one of those guys you just don't know why, but you're just glad that when you're able to get him around for however long he's around. And that match is going to absolutely kill. It's going to be awesome.
And going back to Wise Guy, it's just that numbers game of trying to fit all these people on, and it's like, here's a guy who hasn't won very many matches, but he still jumps the line when I needed a guy to work Graves because I knew it was going to be a good match. I needed a guy to work Hammerstone on that show, and I went to Wise Guy because I knew he was going to give
I was going to say, Wise Guy doesn't need to win matches to be a threat. I mean, like the minute he walks through the curtain, he's immediately a threat. I think that goes with Gatson too. I mean, like both those guys don't win often. I mean, Gatson wins a lot more than Wise Guy, but both guys, when you see them come through the curtain, immediately you're thinking a threat. And I think that goes to show why Joe books them. You know, like Joe sees them as guys who, and for all intents and purposes, it's not off the wall that those guys couldn't pick up a win out of nowhere. Like Joe's been notorious for throwing the belt on a guy out of nowhere as well. I mean, it's not like Brandon Gatson isn't a former No Limits champion or any of that stuff. So it's not like he won't do that kind of thing. And I think that's where the intangible of writing those guys in and out of here is. You know, you just, with those two dudes, you can see it's immediately their threats in whatever matchup they go through.
And when you're going through the card, you could put a check mark before the match because you know it's going to be a good match.
Good. Yeah, good.
You know what I mean? It's like sometimes with the younger guys, you know, sometimes it's hit or miss. Sometimes they'll blow it out of the park, and sometimes they'll be Hero Lou versus Watson. You know, you know what I'm saying? It was like, you know, Watson and Bay was really good, and I've seen Watson have a lot of good matches. Just whatever it was, you know, Remy was like, dude, that shit was horrible. You know, I've never heard him bash a match as bad as that one. And we've had some bad matches, you know, Kid Vegas and Bryce Harrison under a mask, or Mike Delight and Kid Vegas in Mesquite. You know, those were some shit fests. You know what I'm saying?
I call it as I see it. And, you know, listen, that thing, some nights you just don't have the chemistry, and you can tell in that evening that those two guys, while they're young and they have all the potential in the world, you saw what was happening there. And like, it's unfortunate those things happen. You know, you have clunkers every now and then.
That's how you learn. That's how you learn and get better. You're going to have those matches, and you got to work through it.
Yeah, and hopefully that shit never sees the light of day. Unfortunately,
we had a match like that at the Silver, except it was Kenny King and Sean Ricker, and it was a shit fest. And
you never know why. You never know why those things happen. You sometimes it's chemistry, sometimes a guy's off. You know, you just, as a performer and as a guy who's in there, like there is a thing about it, and you have to feel it. And sometimes certain dance partners you can't do it with. And I don't know what was going on, especially in the Ricker Kenny match. I think both guys came in off of a travel, which is also
what it was Ricker had just gotten released, and he really didn't get any ring time because he had a lot of heat in NXT or whatever it was back then. And
also blown
off TV. So 2 minutes and they went 14 or something. That happened one time with Brian Cage and Kenny King. They had a really bad match, you know. So
who's the common denominator in that one? Oh, I'm just joking.
Yeah,
sorry,
that's what I'm saying.
No, just but it again. These are just things that happen out there. You know, I've been knocked loopy where I didn't know where the fuck I was. You know, I've been blown where it was atrocious to try to get through. Like, there's just all this stuff that goes on while you're out there, and you just never know. And Joe's right. You just move past it, you know. And Hero Lou has all the potential in the world. Watson's, you know, genuinely getting some steam out of Arizona to where he's probably, I don't know, there's a lot of guys in Arizona, but Watson's the first name that comes to mind usually because he's the more predominant guy who's kind of making his rounds besides the Hammer Graves class thing. But also like Thugnificent coming out of there is a good dude, you know, like a lot of the guys who are kind of just genuinely, you know, trying to make their comeuppance that don't really travel, have a little bit of talent that is coming out of that city. So for me, I think like you're going to start seeing these guys when they start to come over, like a Watson, you're going to be able to, you're like, oh, he's pretty good. And it's usually because there's a good core of guys who are already there pretty good who, you know, can kind of do that. I think that's why it makes us so successful too, is Jay Vidal can get in there with a Greg Sharp, you know, at any given night. And think about that for a second, right? Like Jay's couple years in, right? 4, I think at this point, or 3, 4, and Greg's world traveled, you know, and then Greg also moves and is working at a very high level. And when you get going with sharpening your knife at 2 high level guys, you're going to get the best product out of it. You know, it's why Damian Drake became so good quickly, is because you're able to put him in there with high level talent, and he was able to kind of hang at first, and then he became really good to where he's hanging all, you know, with everyone. And now he's, you know, coming in off an injury to where he could predominantly be a really big force, whether he goes after the No Limits, Nevada State, or heavyweight. I don't know what Joe has planned for him coming back, or if they go into the tag team, you know, whatever happens there. You're also got to include these guys who are really, really good in our farm system as well, you know. And I think that's what's good about Arizona, is they're starting to get a good farm system to come out of there.
Yeah, I'm also a fan of Mr. Classic. It's just, again, you know,
yep, you're right.
It's just those numbers thing. Like, he's always trying to come down, but the problem is Fridays are a bad day for him, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know, I'm trying to get you into some future shocks, but when we do them on Friday and you can't do them, I can't just pop you on a high octane, because if you do, well, you know, that's going to take away from one of our top younger guys. So
yeah,
he's just a guy, always interested in coming down, always helpful, you know, whether he's booked or not. Sometimes that's how Watson got booked. You know, he would come down and help set up a ring and not even be booked on the show. And
there's so many talents out. There's so much talent out there right now, guys. I mean, really, they're the guy from OVW. What's the guy's name with Jocelyn? If they came
Isaiah
out the last
Broner.
Broner, man, like that dude is like, I looked at his work just the other day, and like, gosh, I mean, like OVW has a real crazy amount of like core talent coming out of there. There's also a dude who's working out of Kentucky. He kind of has like a chainsaw gimmick. His name's Nate Hewitt, but he's like the chainsaw guy. And like his lady, like they were kind of training at Knox Pro for a little while too, man. And they had injury, but they have such a good gimmick, and their work rate is going to be like, where once they start getting back into it, you're going to see a lot of crazy good workers like kind of come out of the woodwork. And a lot of those guys end up having a lot of their eyes on FSW because it's the show to be on when you start to talk about the West Coast. I'd like to talk about the Level Up guys too out of San Diego, man. Like Jordan Cruz is a humongously good talent. You know,
he's another guy. It's like he always wants to be there. But again, there's so many guys, and the Michael Hopkins guy down there.
Yeah. And then Enya just got
fucking brought a guy out for the show last week. Romeo Cruz trained with Jesse Hernandez, EWF.
Cool.
Very solid. Like
you're just starting to see a lot of these guys, and their schools are so good, because when you have a guy like B-Boy training out of like your school, like that's crazy. That's crazy knowledge to have that. And Santino's is always produced, right? Think about all that are what they've produced. And Joey Chaos is, man, like I've never really worked with Joey ever until I got to Primetime, and he was my agent for the night. And man, him and Mongol have just such a grasp on what real pro wrestling is supposed to be like, looking like as far as like television wise, and they've been around it for so long. So naturally, when you get that kind of stuff coming out or producing schools, you're going to get some really crazy talent coming out of that stuff. And even some of the girls that are out there right now, I like Bryn Thorne. She's turned it around to 180% now that and she has nothing out in Arizona. There's not a whole lot out in Arizona that is producing that kind of stuff. So she has to go out and do all these other shows. Knox Pro's been a good proprietor to give them all these this element or this platform to go out there and perform. So a lot of these people on the West Coast are kind of doing that for them. They have a streaming service so they can get the reps in. And then you have the Mecca, FSW. Everybody wants to stop in Vegas. It's whenever anybody asks me about FSW, Joe's picky about who he's going to fly in. It's got to make sense. If it makes dollars, it's going to make sense for Joe, right? So that's why you get your fly-ins and your loot. However, when you're in Vegas for the night and you're just like, hey, I'm on vacation, I need to hit a show, Joe will find something for you, especially if you're a talent of some sort. If you're a Will all day.
We got guys that came in on their own. Percy Drew's like, hey, I'll get myself there. He's going to be back October 9th. He showed up once, had a really good match. A guy sponsored him a little bit and help take care of his flight for him. But Travis Titan, the guy that you were supposed to work, Remy, at that at Joey's show, but he was
Oh yeah,
dark. You know, these
well yeah,
guys. He was
Travis
training
Tight,
Seth Rollins, and these guys.
Black Label, yeah, because
take the shot.
That Black Label Pro is another place, right? That they have a good, you know, core, or that Midwest, you know, a lot of guys out of Chicago and, you know, doing the AAW stuff like that. Like a lot of girls. I was telling Joe 6 months ago about Sky Blue, right? She just debuted, or like then just debuted, but you know, they gave her the shot at the wild card, right? Where she got a big reaction. And again, there's so many good talents across the United States right now that, you know, picking and choosing is kind of, you know, in a promoter's, if it makes sense for the promoter, it's okay. But when you sit there and I could fly you in and I could do all this thing, but you know, I have Ice Williams, you know what I mean, who's a star, you know, like he's a star. Am I beckoning? You know, he's like a fucking star right now.
But what's crazy is in 2021, there's wrestling fans who like a certain guy and they like FSW. They'll get that guy to Vegas.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the talent's not going to spend $300-400 on a flight. But these fans are so rabid that they will spend money to get their favorite wrestler to wrestle in one of their favorite companies, because budget-wise, it does not make sense for me to fly Percy Drews in for $400.
Yeah. We also have like a lot of our inner core people trying to get our guys to places too. You know, like for all intents and purposes, like a big push for me is to go to Warrior, right? Like I've been in contact with Warrior out of Chicago over the last couple of months, and like really we're just trying to find a date and a place where we can get there. And also Joe's got his hand in a lot of the guys on the West, so like Defy and the Whack guy, you know, these are guys that Joe could probably in some fashion get, like dudes who are like Jay Vidal and Matt Vandergriff, who are they're fan favorites in these areas of Washington. You know, Brett or Damian Drake is a fan favorite in Washington or the Portland area. You know, we've all have built a name in the Pacific Northwest. It's not like we don't have a name there. So it's good if when we get those guys to come in, that's amazing for Joe, right? But it's also good that we're actually getting stuff as well. It's been nice to have like a two-way street on that way. Travis, it will never, it hasn't worked out yet, but the idea that he could get out here, or we can use guys who are out here, like there's a guy who can kind of get out. His name is PB Smooth, real big dude, but him and Shogun would be crazy. Like it's just nice if we can get that two-way street. Sorry.
Yeah.
Shogun
these
must
guys,
be there.
well, yeah, these guys need a production room.
All right. Well, let's wrap up. Any final words, Joe? You know, going into this week, and then of course going to have the big show coming up on the 24th.
Well, we kind of set things up at High Octane. So we got the Ultimate Finessers, which is Chris Bay, Hero, Shogun, and Nino against Lights, Camera, Faction. Survivor Series type 4-on-4 elimination. We got Project Body Count, Hammerstone Graves, and, you know, whichever one of their boys from Arizona that they want to bring in is going to take on the MK Army, which is going to be Juicy and Toa. Tito's unavailable, so MK is going to the well to bring in his boy Sam Adonis, who's making his return. We haven't seen him since that crazy match he had with Psycho Clown at the FSW Arena. So anytime we can get Sam Adonis, you know, he's the guy that I really like seeing, and, you know,
big fan of Sam Adonis
a little more often.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a match with Sam. I'm not gonna lie. There's two guys. I mean, Sam's definitely on the list, but I also, if at some point in my career, I really need the Chris Masters match, Joe. Me and Chris Masters. Come on, baby.
Chris Masters, he's one of my favorite dudes. I love Chris Masters.
Yeah, I need that match so badly because that dude is I don't know. He's the NWA has made him the national champion, and like the NWA is doing a lot of great stuff too, right? So there's a lot of things that are happening. You can touch areas and all this stuff, and Joe has a pretty good his Rolodex is deep, and
Yeah,
getting Sam
Remy
in,
puts
getting
that
Sam
over.
is
I got that strong Rolodex.
well, getting Sam in here is huge. Like him and Psycho Clown was bananas. They tore the place apart. And I told Joe, I was just like, have you ever seen this kind of match? And he's just like, nah, he didn't really give it much. Like he gave it like the Joe, and that's how he is, right? He just gives it the but man, by the end of that match, he was like, holy shit. I'm just like, I know, bro.
Like, this was great. This was like one of the best matches I've seen at the arena.
It's fucking crazy.
Because I'm still thinking of I'm thinking of the old Sam Adonis doing the American gimmick and him fighting with Brian Cage because Brian Cage calling him a copycat or whatever. But now they're boys, so it's all good.
And Sam, Sam, again, he's that journeyman. He's been everywhere, England and all over the place, and probably hasn't gotten the notoriety that he should and whatever. And the brother went off and got the WWE stuff, and he's doing a lot of great things now, right? He's just now starting to kind of hit that stride, right? And I would love him to be the NWA champion, or love this for him to get more of the AAA stuff, man, because he's such a good heel, like he just gets it. And listening to him is fun. He's just a fun dude to be around. And then when he gets out there, it's crazy because he's fucking intense, as many of them are, man. Once that red light's on, it becomes a whole nother person. So you appreciate where you can get that. And like for MK to have ties to that, for Joe to be able to get in on that, like Sam and Hammer would fucking rule, bro. Like, goddamn, that would be such a good match. And, I'd be jealous not to have that match too, but that match would be fucking amazing. Kid you not. And, the people alone would love it. Our audience would eat that up alive because, Hammer is just so beloved here. Sam is so hated. So it'd be a match that I think like Joe could easily make happen for it to be like a big time show match. Yeah, I like Sam a lot. What else we got?
Anything else?
Gregory Sharp and Jay Vidal, they're going to be in a last man standing match.
That's for the Survival of the Fittest, though, right? That's not for this weekend?
Yeah, he was asking about Survival of the Fittest.
Okay.
The tag gauntlet match, we got a scramble match so far that has Keita Murray. It's got Nick Wayne, Jordan Oasis, and it looks like we just secured the rights to my guy Eli Everfly. But there's still some things up in the air. Like right now, like an Adrian Quest, I'm not sure where he's going to fit. Is it possible in the Nevada state?
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
Is it the scramble? Possibly. We're still trying to figure out the last couple of matches that hopefully after this Friday at Future Shock, we'll be able to solidify, the rest of the card. Initially, I was trying to do the scramble match as kind of a young blood, the young guns scramble. Maybe the winner gets that FSW contract, using some new guys that we haven't really used on frequent basis. But
yeah, I mean, the contract is one thing, but in the reality is that, you should make it for something a little bit more, give it a prize of some sort, not the contract is it, but let's give it the no limit shot.
Adding Eli Everfly. No limit shot. Eli Everfly is on the roster, so that kind of washes that idea.
Right.
Ice Williams needs opponents, so maybe the scramble match, the winner, gets a shot at the No Limits Championship at the next High Octane, for example.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, it makes it bigger than it just being like it's one thing for it to just be young guns because you get that feel from it, right? Nick Wayne's like one of the more predominant guys who are kind of getting a lot of notoriety right now, and Keita, these guys are it's going to be a fast paced match, and to give it the no limits title shot, just it puts a little bit more emphasis on the match where I think these guys are going to go a little harder than normal. And then you get the benefit of them coming back, with whoever wins. The fans win on that match if it's like that. They get the match, and then they get whoever is going to move on and potentially wrestle Ice. And again, I don't know a whole lot other than for our No Limits thing, but Ice is, I think he's like at 400, 500 days, 600 days, man. I mean, like there hasn't been a No Limits champion quite like him, as far as domination. I mean, I had my little stint, but Damian Drake was kind of, really making a big run for it. And then like now Ice, like nobody's touched him. So,
well, no,
somebody like a Jay Vidal.
Yeah, but in all fairness, Remy, nobody could touch him for about 360 legally. So,
well, yeah, I mean, me and Joe joke about how I've had more title defenses in my 3 months as Nevada State champion. I'm just joking, but I mean, the thing is when it comes down to it, you would like to see the best matchup, and for that Young Guns match, whoever wins, to have Ice be, the guy that is next in line for that. You're looking at, potentially on paper to set up, like, I would not want to miss High Octane that night, right?
Yeah, I was also looking at Jack Cartwheel, who's hot as a firecracker. He's not available, but Trey Lamar now moved to LA. And there's another cat who actually was wrestled EC3 at the No Peace, Kevin Blackwood, who just moved out to LA, who's really talented also. So again, there's so much talent between LA and Vegas. And before we go, I want to make a shout out. Jeff Cobb pinning Okada the other day.
No shit. Good for Jeff, man.
And it's
Jeff's
match,
amazing.
Yeah.
What see that I guess like that becomes a thing, is you get Vegas to be such a hub, right? You get all this great talent that's coming out of here. It would be awesome to have Jeff be on the show at one point, again, because I mean, it's not like we hadn't used Jeff or Jeff wasn't ever on the show, but since his New Japan, and he looks crazy now in comparison to when we last had him, right?
Oh, yeah. I remember him in a dark match when the Scum brought him in. Who was the guy? He was like the Mr. America guy, the military, Nate the Great, whatever.
Jesus, that's Dayton. Oh my gosh, yeah, Nate the Great. Yep. It wasn't Nate the Great. It was somebody else. We just called him Nate the Great because he was the Nate not so great. He was Nate not so great.
He had the
ring name Max Falcon.
Whatever.
That was the ring name.
I always joked with Cobb about how he carried him.
Again, it goes into showing like a lot of guys moved out here to Vegas is such a big hub, right? It's easier to fly out of here. It was cheap at the time that everybody ended up coming out here, so you have a lot of guys who are influxed out here. Joe has used Sheik before, but like that's another person I wouldn't mind seeing at our show, like just because she's getting such a big notoriety right now. There's such a clamoring for her with the GCW stuff that it becomes this thing where
I had a crazy dream the other day, swear to God.
Yeah.
I was talking to Sheik about wrestling Sandra Moon.
That match would be crazy. That match would be so good, though. That match would be so good because if there's one thing that Sheik's been able to do for her entire career, has always been able to make somebody better in the ring, right? We've wrestled on many occasions, and when it was the Enemies of the State, it was such a good feud, and we would have really good matches. So I think like when you start to go into where they are today, look at them, like Sandra's on such a good rise right now. She just came off of this like crazy match with Maz, and Sheik has been riding this wave of the GCW, right? And like the match with fucking Nick Gage was insane, right? It had this and I think when you start to get that in there, like there's why not? And she's local, why not? When you have local people who are this kind of talent, why not? There are so many good local talents here in our city that it's kind of crazy that underneath one umbrella, it could be, something spectacular. All those pieces need to kind of fit. And when Joe pitches a match like Sandra Moon versus Sheik, the Dark Sheik, it's kind of amazing. She does another one where like her name is like Nurse Ratchet, and it's so good. Mike, right, for Hood Slam, it's so good. And that's when I first saw it. I was like really blown away by it because it was such a different thing than I've ever seen anybody perform before.
Right.
And now it's a whole nother level with it being Dark Sheik and the GCW stuff. Like, it's great to have or see that for her, because like we were getting nothing. There was hungry. We just wanted something. And now we're starting to get a little bit of a notoriety. And I think it's great. I think it's wonderful when they start to get notoriety. Everybody puts a lot of hard work into this thing. We beat the shit out of ourselves for a long period of time. And the guys who are doing it now, while they're young, it's great that they're getting notoriety. I'll fucking love it. But it's also good when guys who have been putting in so much work and so much, and now they're starting to kind of reap the fruits of the labor. Like, that's pretty special, because it's hard. This thing is hard. It's not easy. It's not an easy trade. It's not easy to do it all the time, but we do it because the 15 minutes that we are able to spend out between the curtain is everything. And then the camaraderie in the back is all of it. And then we get to, hang out with guys like you, do shit like this. It all benefits. And hopefully this thing can take it to a whole new level. Joe's got a lot of good ideas for this match, for the next year. So hopefully it just gets into a whole nother thing. I'd like to see it go to the next level, and hopefully our production can get it there too.
Yeah. Joe, any final words as we say goodbye?
Well, my battery was dead. It was dying. I ran, and just as I was about to plug in, it turned off. It was like literally a half a second. The truth of the matter is, we're always growing. Every year that we think was the best year we've ever had, we continually surpass it. We already have gone, we're into 12 years. And, when we first started, the first 3, 4, 5, 6 years, nobody even ran. Now there's all these other people that are running, and we're still the king of the mountain, and there's a reason for that, because we built so much fan loyalty and so much that we've done with the talent that we've brought in, with the way the wrestlers deal with the fans, that, trying to tell stories, we've been hugely successful. And just like we're successful here in Vegas, I think we would be successful anywhere they saw FSW. And then the idea is now, again, let's get there. We got stopped in our tracks because everything got closed down and we barely ran for a year. And now we're starting to get our foot, starting to grow again. And, doing the thing with GCW, was a big deal. It showed that we could be on the same level as them, because, when you go to Twitter, you go to social media, I saw some of the posts. Hey, the biggest winner of the weekend was FSW, because we got to be seen in more of a national spotlight for the first time. So guys like Remy, Marcel, and Cody, and Funny Bone, and, the Toas and the Graves, I'm pretty sure people wouldn't mind seeing, not that it'll happen because they hate each other, but imagine seeing Toa and Graves against the Second Gear crew. You know what I mean? That could be fun.
And, I mean, there's a lot of good matchups that could be coming out of that kind of thing. And I think when you start to set it up, like for Joe, it becomes this idea of making the best matchups that come to town, right? And a lot of the stuff ended up happening by happen chance. It's always been FSW's MO, right? A lot of stuff happens because somebody either cancels or can't or whatever, so other things have to be slid in, or stuff has to get kind of moved around. For all intents and purposes, Joe would be the first one to tell you that, RMB was probably going to be on the show, but they were booked someplace else, so he had to make it around. And then but all those things happened, and that you got that match of what it was. And FSW is a lot of that. There's a lot of these things where we move parts around at the very last second that ended up working brilliantly. You know, like there's just so you know when we call the audibles, they end up being the best for that situation, and I think that's becomes just how pro everybody is about it. You know, we understand what's on the table. We have to go out there and knock it out of the park, and that's usually what we end up doing. It'd be great to have a chance to wrestle on a GCW show, actually being like a part of the GCW thing itself. You know, like I think you're going to get a lot of great things or a lot of good matchups, and a lot of that stuff benefits Joe too. Like for me, I feel like Joe would be my go-to when I want to talk to promoters now, because it seemingly is a better or easier route to go through right now, right? Hey, Joe, can you go out and reach out to Defy or whomever, because it's probably seemingly...
My guy in Texas hit me up. He was talking about you the last week, trying to get you on the show.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, let's get it. Which one is this? But I mean,
Joe...
Go ahead.
The one who Vandergrift they brought in from the last one.
Yeah, I mean, again, Joe has... He has much of a networking in the business especially with the promoters as we do now, you know, and it's probably a little bit more easier, and it means a little bit more coming from him to put those guys out there. I mean, Joe would be the first one to tell you who he has no problem putting the guys who he likes out there, you know, like he's going to vouch for a guy like Vandergrift or Jay Vidal because their work speaks for itself. Joe knows that if I go out and represent FSW, more often than not, probably 9 times out of 10, the match is going to be solid, or I'm going to be okay to walk back through the curtain with it being like a good match, you know. And he only has those confidences in being able to speak up for you. And I think that's a big part of his growth too, is he has friends everywhere now, you know, like Joe has friends in every promotion, big, small, whatever. And I think those are the types of relationships you want to build, you know, and he's probably known as the guy to go through in Vegas. And that's huge because he spent a lot of time building that name. FSW.
Yeah, we got Impact coming twice in the next 2 months. And I have to be home tomorrow because they're sending a pallet of tables to my house, which is always good because they get like 5 canvases, 10 tables, a whole bunch of chairs. And once they're done, we get to keep it all. So it's the added bonus.
I mean, again, Joe is a guy when you go to, if you're going to run in Vegas and you're another big promotion, right? And he's the guy that is Vegas wrestling. And I think as much as he wants to make a buck, you know, that's going to be great. And he would love to financially stable his life through FSW. That's all of our goals. The idea also of having it be like there wasn't anybody in Vegas. You know, you had Buffalo Jim was the Vegas promoter, and now that is long gone and probably will never surface. And when you talk about FSW wrestling, it's really, really going to be hard to talk about Vegas wrestling without talking about Joe DeFalco. And I think that's ultimately what he set out to do. So he's accomplished a lot.
I think the reason we are so successful is that I was more concerned with making the company than making money, because if I wanted to make money, I could make money tomorrow. I could just not bring in Remy Marcel and not bring in Hammerstone and not bring in Graves and use all the young guys and the students that get paid little to no money. And
I halfway believe that. I halfway believe that, because you could do that, but your quality of show is going to go down. The reason why you spend the money is because you're getting the best quality of show. Nobody can sell like Remy Marcel. Nobody can come out and get the crowd like Remy Marcel or Hammerstone. The reason why you pay me, the money you pay me is because immediately when I walk through the curtain, and it's more often than not, they go crazy or they have a reaction and they give a fuck about me. And that's what you're paying for. And you know that I'm going to go out there and put my body on the line for you, and you don't get anything mailed in more often than not. You know, like, yeah, I might ask you for a night off of like a tag match or a multi-man match when I put in a 3-day weekend, but you know, like your man's getting old nowadays. But
see, that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you look at some of our cards, there's 9, 12, 14 guys that are top name dudes. Like go with 4 or 5 if the whole concern was money. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, but yeah, I think
to have the best show possible.
Well, that's a you thing too, and I think that speaks to your personality and how you run your business. You rather have a top to bottom good show with making a little bit of money. You're more concerned about quality over quantity, and I think that's going to be a point where at some point it will break. It should turn the corner. You hope to believe that. And then we're doing everything we possibly can to make that happen. Now, Joey has redefined our production team. Our production team was terrible in the grand scheme of things. Now it runs like
why are you bringing up Skater Bob like that?
Now it runs in a position to have almost like a well-oiled machine. Yeah, we have our hiccups. Yeah, we have all these things, but those are things I think are on a technology basis. If we had a multi-million-dollar setup, switchboard, whatever the case may be, I think we're running a thing. If we have a production truck like Marquez, where he's out there doing and calling the shots, and Joey's in there to be able to do that thing, I think all of those things are capable because everybody that's in place, whether it's Joey or Spider or Mikey on the in production, they all have a value to us. And I think these are the unsung heroes, right? If you want to shout out people, like as I end this, I want to shout out our production team and everybody else that doesn't get the notoriety that they should. David Lawson, who's sitting there at concession, you and Rocky, who are sitting there taking tickets every single night, or any of the other students who are trusted in the idea that, hey, we have to trust you with taking tickets. Then it goes into our production team, or who are hustled and they don't reap anything but a good show. It's not like Joe has a big budget to pay for him. All the budget that goes into production is usually going into the equipment, so they have better equipment to fuck around with. And it's a joy for them, right? But hopefully this leads on to bigger and better things. Mikey's working with Warrior, which is great. You know, he's a very talented dude who has a very vast knowledge of putting a good structured footage vignette together. You have Spider, who already knows the pro wrestling side of things. He's already been in the ring for 5+ years, and the kid's only 22 years old. It's crazy, right? And now he's going into production. And then Joey, who, while yes, he's a maniac, and yes, you do run like you guys are crazy, but it's father-son shit. He still has a vast knowledge of just being the guy who did it for 12 years now. Joey's been editing our show for 12 years. You guys have been editing our show for 12 years. You know what you like, you know what you don't like. Now Joey can go into a show and cut it within the first 2 hours. Ben, who sits there for multi-hours after reffing all night long to make sure that thing gets put out. These are the guys who they don't get a payday. They don't get shout out. They don't get nothing.
Yeah. Whoa. They get a little payday.
Okay, a little payday, but for
little payday.
More often
little
than
taste.
Not,
they get a little taste.
They're just not getting what we all get. They don't get the adulation when as we get the high of the adrenaline, and their adrenaline high is just a little bit different. If they had a good camera shot, or they caught us fucking hitting it right, they're just they're right there. If a fucking vignette or a segment works really well, Joe rid out a dusty finish, and Sandra Moon got the belt, but then they took it away. Oh, that's their big joy for the night. And I think it's the behind the scenes stuff that nobody gets to see, and it's also them that again, they don't get the adulation. So those guys need it just as much as we all do. They all work hard. We all are putting blood, sweat, and tears literally into this fucking place. Spider's here from 12 to 12 usually. That's crazy. The kid has a fucking 9-to-5 job that he has to go and do. So these are things that happen. Joey's ran his first show, right? Joey took a point where he was just like, I want to run my own show. And for the most part, it was kind of a success, Not bad,
I know, and now I got to hear every single day. Like, I won't say he'll come down the stairs, October 21st, joint show.
Boom. Days. All right.
No, that's a great point. It's great recognition. I think that that is kind of lost amongst everything the fans see. It's just something that's not as appreciated because it's not something that is in front of the fans. It's behind the scenes, and that is a great shout out. And it's some of the best production work in the business right now. As we say goodbye, Remy, any final thoughts for you as we're ready to end up?
No, I'd like to see things move forward. So, as we kind of wrap up things, I've listened to the podcast a lot. Mike, I think you need to hit Joe with some harder questions. I think you kind of softball him every now and then. Just joking, but kind of hit him with some toughies. I know he can kind of be intimidating a little bit. Joe, just infrastructure some things out of the school as we talk about every single day. But I mean, you know how it is on our end is we're all sitting here trying to put the best thing forward. The podcast has grown immensely since you guys have started. You guys are actually doing a pre-show, which is something we talked about. Remember, I think we were at the it had to have been around December at some point, right? And we were talking about it being like, hey, let's do a thing. And you guys run a pre-show with Boss. And I think that's great. You know, like I think all of these things moving forward are wonderful things moving our product forward. So that's, as we wrap up, for me, I just like to see it kind of keep going in that direction. And hopefully when we get to a point to get residuals, everybody gets to get a piece of that pie. You know, I have faith that Joe likes to disperse, you know, rewards. You know, he does. He's a giver, man. He's always been that way with me. When he does. So that's why everybody loyal to him. They work their asses off for him. Joe's probably one of the only promoters that will get a guy to come in for maybe under his rate and maybe get to do a little bit of extra things like skewers to the head. So these are things that, you know, you will go into war with the idea that this dude has done the same for you. And that's kind of always going to be the outing that I have with FSW, with Joe, with Rocky, is they've given me a platform, Joe especially. I mean, I'd be the first one to tell you I get my free reign with Joe. Like I'm able to kind of come in and
he
be
comes
like,
up
yeah.
with some stupid shit too. Sometimes it's like I let him do something. It's like, fuck, that was terrible.
But moving it forward, like, you know, I appreciate that, and like not a lot of people are awarded that, especially here in this company where some people might think that that's beneficial for me, or they might even be mad at that I get that kind of stuff, you know. And I just want to let everybody know that I'm appreciative and I'm grateful to be able to do that for this company, you know. And more often than not, I think like everybody kind of puts their best foot forward when we're going out there. As soon as we have a show, everybody's on the same page that we're going to go out there and kill it because we believe in the company. Whether you've had a disagreement with Joe or whether you believe that you should be paid or not paid, the end of the day is the people that did pay, which was our audience that night, the faithful, we go out there and give it for them. So that's, you know, that's my final thought on it. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. That's a great point to wrap up. Also, Joe, I think out of all this, the one thing I got is Remy Marcel wants to wrestle Nick Gage at the next GCW FSW.
I think he wants the main event. Yes.
No. I said there's like Moxley and Chris Masters were two names that were going around, but Nick Gage, Jesus, I think that's a Cody thing, man. I mean,
yeah.
Fuck. How do you not have that singles? How do you not have that singles match?
That could be FSW, GCW too. Nick Gage gets the belt back, and it's for the GCW title.
Fuck.
But what we'll do is we're just going to start. What we're going to do is we're just going to have like an alleyway match, like No Peace does without the ring.
Yes.
You too. So get ready for some light. Arrow was interested, he said. So.
Well, brother, we got the hallway or the alleyway right outside the school. We can just put some cars around.
That's what I'm saying. We don't even.
Yeah, we don't even need it.
Who was it? Owen Hart.
Yeah.
That'll be the main event. Nick Gage. Everybody can stand on the cars. It'll be even better.
Yeah, you know, Nick Gage versus Cutthroat Cody. Sorry,
all right,
Cody.
I'll find out when GCW's coming back, baby. We'll get it done, and you could have the rematch with Atticus.
Sure, but I if I had to give you a GCW guy that I really want is the Everett Connors guy, man. Have you seen that guy? That guy is something special, bro. Like that Everett Connors guy is, whew. Yeah. He can wrestle.
Was he in Vegas for their show?
He was not. You didn't.
That's
get
what
to
I'm
see
saying.
him.
I didn't think I shared his name because
he
mentioned it. I'm like, I don't even see this guy here.
Yeah, I mean that's a GCW name for sure. That I.
What about Ricky Morton?
Brother, did you? Oh man, if you ever get a chance to sit down with Effie again, talk to him about the Ricky Morton match. That is fucking classic.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna save you guys that one because that shit is classic. I was like, how was it working with him? And he told me a good story, bro. It's just hilarious. It's hilarious. You definitely need to get an Effie with Ricky Morton. His fucking weekend was Ricky Morton, Disco Inferno, and like a War Games fucking thing, right? Or like a street fight. Oh my God. What a weekend. Yeah. What a fucking weekend for that guy. Jesus.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. And until next week, we'll see you then.